Hello, Super Friends. I am sitting here at Akron Comic Con alongside of Darryl Banks.
Hey, everybody.
And this is November 5th, Sunday, at Akron Comic Con. So how you doing today, Darryl?
I'm doing fantastic. How are you doing?
I'm pretty good, pretty good. Earlier we were talking about it, and Kyle Rayner, you said you were a wrestling fan.
Yes.
Now that I know you're a wrestling fan, how much of that actually did you put in the books?
Back before I was doing Green Lantern, I did fill-in issues of Legion of Superheroes. And there was a crowd scene with a bunch of aliens. It was, took place in the future, and I thought, I'll sneak in wrestler Big Van Vader in the background.
Okay.
And I figure if I put in Hulk Hogan, Andre the Giant, everyone would recognize it. So I figure no one would know who Big Van Vader was. Wrong. My editors were like, you put Vader in the background. I'm like, how do you know? He goes, think about it. This is DC Comics in New York City. We're down the street from Madison Square Garden.
Yep.
Yes, we know who Vader is. I'm like, oh, so I'm thinking I'm in trouble. Like, no, if you kind of want to put some Easter eggs in there, that's fine. So I did a Legion of Superheroes pinup of, Ultra Boy, putting the abdominal stretch on the Persuader.
Okay.
And so it just went on and on. Whenever I could put it in there,
okay.
I figure if it's a problem, they'll have me redraw it, and that never happened. I mean, when Hal Jordan killed Sinestro in Green Lantern 50, first he DDT'd him, then put the sleeper on him. I thought they're gonna hate that. Like, no, they didn't. They loved it. So
is it right to say your signature is putting some wrestling moves into your illustration?
It's one of those things where art imitates life and back and forth, and so if I could put it in there and it's not stupid, they're fine with it. You know.
And it sounds like you just like having fun with your creation.
That's the thing. I figure if I'm having fun, the readers will have fun. And
it sounds like that's what Kyle Rayner did too with his ring, him being an artist too.
Right. It's the nature, I think, of the powers. It's willpower and thought, but if you add imagination to it and creativity, it makes the character more interesting. And I've always felt like that's something that it should be just part and parcel to what a Green Lantern is. Creativity, improvisation, that sort of thing. So
that's the one thing I always thought that stood out between him and Hal Jordan, because I know Hal Jordan, I think, would be known second for his creations.
Right.
But Kyle, correct me if I'm wrong here, but isn't it true that he doesn't go back to, if he created an image or a construct, he never did it again?
Well, not the same. For example, they made it a rule for me, but they didn't have to, because I was going to do it anyway. They said never have Kyle create the exact same thing twice.
Okay.
For example, he can create multiple shields, but it can't always be the same shield. For example, let's say one issue is creating a medieval shield. Well, the next one will be a shield that looks like it's from anime.
Okay.
Or the next one, it's a giant turtle shell. It could be a shield. It just has to always be different. And they didn't have to make that a rule. That's what I wanted to do anyway. So that worked perfectly.
You're already on it. You had
Absolutely.
that in mind already.
Yes.
Okay. Another question I have for you. Now, I did not know this until a couple days ago. You actually you live from Ohio. You came from Ohio.
Columbus, Ohio. Born and raised, still there.
Okay. Now, what all did you learn from going to school, arts and design?
At CCAD, it was a great foundational program. It helped me understand composition, working from life, being a professional, doing things in a timely fashion, that sort of thing. And it really prepared me. So once I graduated, I did independent study on understanding how to do comics. They didn't have a comic program then, but I was able to take some time off and learn about the mechanics of putting a comic page together and pacing and panel layout, that sort of thing.
Okay. Another question I also have for you, since you did go to the school there, when did they actually incorporate the illustration for comic books? Do they have a class for that, for drawing comic books or manga or anything like that?
I created that back in 94, 95. When I think about it, it was an instructor of mine that thought it was a good idea. He saw my work on Green Lantern and he thought it would be a good idea to have a program in that school. And I thought, well, I've never created a class before at a college. How do you do it? And he said, well, what do they need to know? I said, a lot of things. So, well, write those things down, and we'll look at a lesson plan, and the rest was history.
Okay.
So that was something I taught for about 5 years. Well, I also taught illustration, but the comic class I created based on not so much. We didn't do any superhero stuff. I wanted to make sure that no matter what your interest was, it could be something more cartoony, independent. I gave you foundational things about perspective and composition, that you could apply it to whatever direction you wanted to take your comics in. I had some advanced students that took the class multiple times. I think I let them do some other superhero ideas they had. But you had to have taken my class at least a couple times to get to that point.
Okay.
Which was actually a surprise because my class was an elective. You know, it wasn't something you had to have to graduate, but I had a lot of repeat students, so it was a popular class.
Did they repeat on purpose there?
Yeah, they just wanted to keep taking it.
Okay. Very fun.
Yeah, I was very honored by that. So
I would love to actually be in there too. I might should have moved a little bit. Now, since you did teach there, what all did you incorporate from, I guess, the teaching in the books and then teaching in the class? How did that I feel like student and teacher, I feel, go hand in hand. What was the difference from, I feel like you were a teacher in the class, but also a student for the comics too, because you still have to learn things as you go on.
Yeah, it's an ongoing learning process. I mean, I've been professionally illustrating for over 30 years, and I'm still learning new things. I think you never want to stop learning.
Mm-hmm.
No matter what your vocation is. When I was teaching a comic class, I was still working on the book, so I would bring in layouts and I'd bring in scripts and kind of show them the process of how it worked. It was something that it's one thing to have a teacher that teaches a class, but I wanted them to see, like, this is what I do. I'm not just here teaching. I'm showing you a practical application of what my day-to-day work life is like.
Okay, it's very nice. I like that. Also, I had another question for you. Since you are from the Ohio area, where's your favorite con in the Ohio area? I know you say you went to Cincinnati. You've been here at Akron, Columbus.
Well, I mean, when I was younger, it was all about the Mid-Ohio Con. It was in Mansfield, Ohio. Then it eventually came to Columbus. I have such long roots with the Mid-Ohio Con. I think about that was where I would show my artwork to artists, get a lot of feedback. I remember always, especially talking to, there's quite a few. Well, it was Mid-Ohio Con, and there was one in Canton, Ohio, the Akron-Canton Con. And I remember there meeting artists like Larry Stroman, Brian Stelfreeze, Stephen Butler, who else was there? Ron Garney. But at Mid-Ohio, I remember showing my portfolio to Jerry Ordway and Dan Jurgens. And one of my favorite convention memories was talking with Jerry Ordway when he would talk about, he'd look at my page and I'd have, let's say, rubble, like a destroyed building. It would just kind of be random broken shapes. He said, well, if you really want it to feel like rubble, think about what the building was before it was destroyed. Chances are it's not just masonry, but maybe think about broken windows, think about crushed desks, and maybe some kind of machinery or something like that. In other words, it's not just random broken shapes. And I thought, so that's how he does it. You just think about what it is, because, I just more thinking about just drawing it well and making it look like something was crumbling, but it takes it to another level when you could tell what it was that crumbled. It was something that simple. I'm like, okay, yeah, that makes total sense.
Make it look a little bit more realistic.
Right. And then also, he was a big fan of working from real life. I mean, he can draw things that are fictional, but because he can draw realistically, you can apply that to fictional things and gives it that added sense of lifelike nature. And I think, I hate to use the word realistic, it's more like lifelike, because it doesn't have to be real. It's more like you're selling a particular point. You want to believe that
you've been there, you've seen the rubble.
You've been there, or the character could actually exist.
Okay. Another thing I had for you. Now, I also noticed that you did Parallax. You drew on there. You did Dr. Polaris. What was your favorite villain that you ever drew?
Well,
or if you even had a couple.
Well, you mentioned Parallax. I never really had thought of Parallax as a villain when we first created him. He was more like a frustrated anti-hero.
Okay.
But as far as favorite villain, I really liked Graven, the son of Darkseid, that character we came up with. I don't know if he's even still around today. He was fun to do because he related to Darkseid, which was created by the great Jack Kirby. So being able to do something connected to that was great.
You say you saw Parallax more as an anti-hero. Why was that?
Well, the reason he became Parallax was more out of frustration. I mean, imagine you're on a job and you're doing all the favors, and the time you need one, you can't get one when you really need it. It just sends you over the top. I think about the movie with Michael Douglas, Falling Down. As a matter of fact, a lot of times I thought of Hal Jordan as the character Defense. Matter of fact, I made his hair spiky like that character.
Why.
You ever wonder, why does he have spiky hair? That's kind of a nod to him.
Okay. Well, now a little Easter egg you put in there.
Right.
And I feel like that, maybe you feel the same way creating the Green Lantern Corps. they can be villains on the other side if you're looking at from the Sinestro Corps, from the Fear. The way I always looked at it was none of them are really bad guys or good guys. They're just here for their certain sector. Like
that old expression, no one is a villain in their own story.
Mm-hmm.
You know? Now, the different colored lanterns, that was actually after my run.
Mm-hmm.
But as Ethan Van Sciver has told me, that the work that Ron and I did kind of helped pave the way for what he and Jeff Johns had done. But I certainly like the fact that I feel like comic fans are coming to understand what I've always felt, that Green Lantern really needed to be an A-list franchise for the company. I think especially during the Jeff Johns, Ethan Van Sciver run, that was solidified. Like, he's not a background character, some member of the Super Friends. They're, hey, they're right up there with Batman and Superman,
And the costume that you designed then came back into Rebirth. I don't know if you
when Ethan had shown me a picture on Twitter, I thought it was just a variant cover, and I thought, hey, it's a cool throwback. It's not a variant. I feel like that's how he should look.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm thinking, Ethan, it's your book, your vision. You could make him look like any design you want, but that's what he chose.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was beyond honored for that. And add to the fact that Ethan is an amazing costume designer. You think about the Black Lantern Corps and all that stuff. That was all his
scary.
work.
That was very scary.
He could have designed Kyle to look like anything he wanted, but that's what he chose. That's what he chose. So I thought that was great.
Okay,
absolutely.
That made you feel really good knowing that all that went
yeah.
back in and it's coming back. And that's one thing I love about DC Rebirth. Whoever has worked on it in the past, they're kind of bringing it right back to you.
Mm-hmm.
And one more question I have for you. What would you say for any of younger artists trying to get out there, what they need to do?
The first thing is, too often young artists don't want to get what I call a real critique.
Mm-hmm.
And critique is having someone, and not just another artist, but like an editor, someone who is in a position to hire, to really give a Simon Cowell critique over their artwork. If it doesn't hurt your feelings, you didn't get a critique. It's almost like going to the gym and lifting 2 pounds. You're wasting your time. You got to really get someone that's going to be brutally honest with you, and you got to be open and teachable.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's not something where you don't want someone that's just going to insult your work, but you've got to tear it down to build it back up.
Right, and
be open to the criticism that's going to help you go to that next level. And sometimes it's going to be painful, because it certainly was for me. Because I derived quite amount of my dwindling self-esteem from my art, so to have that torn down, it was painful, but it was worth it. It was worth it. I would say that's
now.
Well, thank you. I think that's something that I don't get the feeling that happens enough.
Mm-hmm.
So hopefully that young artists will be able to get those critiques.
Well, thank you very much.
Thank you. My pleasure.
Been a good day.
All right.
And DC fans, DC Superpowers podcast fans, check out our YouTube video. He is going to be the first man that we interviewed here at Comic-Con. And subscribe, please, to DC Superpowers YouTube page.